The great crystal palace of Celestria Prime sparkled like a jewel against the twin suns. Captain Jake Morrison stepped off the human transport ship and looked up at the impossible architecture that seemed to float in the air without any support. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled this part of the galaxy for thousands of years, and their homeworld showed it. Everything gleamed with an otherworldly beauty that made Jake feel small and very human. Ambassador Helen Ross walked beside him as they moved through the welcoming party of alien dignitaries. The Zephyrians were tall and elegant with pale blue skin that seemed to glow from within. Their eyes were large and silver, and they moved like dancers even when they were just walking. Jake had studied their culture for months, but seeing them in person was different. They were beautiful in a way that seemed almost too perfect. The human delegation was small compared to the other groups that had come for the Celestial Convergence ceremony. Jake could see representatives from dozens of different alien species, all gathered in the palace courtyard. Some had multiple arms or wings or scales that changed color. Others looked almost human, except for small details like pointed ears or metallic skin. The variety was amazing, but also overwhelming. Helen touched his arm gently. "Remember, Jake, we're here to observe and make friends. This ceremony happens once every 50 years. Princess Lyrelai must choose a mate from among the gathered nobles, and it will determine the future of their empire. We need to show respect and stay out of their politics." Jake nodded, but his attention was already drawn to the center of the courtyard, where a raised platform had been built. The ceremony was about to begin, and he could see alien nobles from across the galaxy positioning themselves in a large circle. Each one wore elaborate clothing that showed their rank and wealth. Some had jewels embedded in their skin, while others wore robes made from materials that shifted and moved like liquid. A deep bell rang out across the palace grounds, and everyone fell silent. Jake watched as a figure emerged from the palace doors and began walking toward the platform. Even from a distance he could tell this was Princess Lyrelai. She wore a long dress that covered her entire body and a crystalline mask that hid her face completely. Only her eyes were visible through the mask, and they seemed to glow with an inner light. What struck Jake immediately was how alone she looked. As she walked across the courtyard, every person stepped back from her path. Not just a polite distance, but a wide gap, as if she carried some invisible danger with her. The alien nobles who had been so confident moments before now seemed nervous and afraid. Princess Lyrelai reached the platform and turned to face the gathering. Her voice carried clearly across the silent courtyard when she spoke in the common galactic language. "I am Princess Lyrelai of the Zephyrian Empire. According to our ancient laws, I must choose a mate from among you. But know this, my touch brings death to any living being. This is not a choice made lightly." Jake felt the crowd shift uncomfortably around him. He had read about this in the briefing files, but hearing it spoken aloud was different. The princess was literally untouchable. Her own biology made her deadly to anyone who came too close. It explained the distance everyone kept and the sadness he could hear in her voice. The ceremony began with each alien noble stepping forward to present themselves. They spoke of their wealth and power and the alliances they could offer. Some brought gifts of rare metals or ancient artifacts. Others promised entire star systems as dowries, but Jake noticed that none of them got within 10 feet of the princess. They spoke their pieces and then quickly returned to the crowd. As the presentations continued, Jake found himself studying Princess Lyrelai more closely. Despite the mask and covering, he could see her posture and the way she held herself. She was listening politely to each suitor, but there was no real interest in her body language. This was a duty she had to perform, not something she wanted to do. The other humans in their delegation were taking notes and recording everything for their reports back to Earth. This was valuable information about Zephyrian culture and politics. But Jake found himself less interested in the political implications and more curious about the lonely figure on the platform. When the last noble had made his presentation, Princess Lyrelay spoke again. "I thank you all for your offers. I will consider them carefully and announce my decision before the twin suns set." She began to step down from the platform, but Jake found himself moving forward before he had really thought about it. "Wait!" he called out, and his voice carried across the courtyard in the sudden silence. Every eye turned to look at him. The alien nobles seemed shocked that anyone would interrupt the ancient ceremony. The human delegation looked horrified that their military attaché was about to cause a diplomatic incident. But Jake only had eyes for the masked princess, who had stopped and turned to face him. He walked forward until he was at the base of the platform, still a safe distance away but closer than any of the other suitors had dared to come. "Princess." Lyrelay tilted her head slightly as if curious about what this strange human was going to do. Jake looked up at her and smiled. "Your Highness, I know I'm not part of this ceremony officially. I'm just here with the Earth delegation. But I was wondering if maybe you'd like to dance." The silence that followed was so complete, Jake could hear his own heartbeat. "Princess Wei." Lyrelay stared down at him for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft with something that might have been surprise. "You know what I am. You know that my touch means death. Yet you asked me to dance." Jake shrugged and kept smiling. "Then we'll have to find another way to connect." Princess Lyrelay stood in her private chambers, looking out at the twin suns setting over Celestria Prime. 3 days had passed since the human named Jake Morrison had asked her to dance, and she still could not stop thinking about it. No one had ever made such a request. No one had ever treated her as if she were just a normal person, instead of a deadly weapon wrapped in royal silk. The other suitors had been sending gifts and messages since the ceremony. Prince Kael'thas of the Hegemony had offered her an entire fleet of warships. Lord Vexmore of the Trading Confederation promised wealth beyond measure. Each gift came with flowery words about her beauty and power, but Jake had done something different. He had simply asked if she would like to walk in the palace gardens with him. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Enter," she called, and her guardian commander Vextar walked in. The old Zephyrian warrior had protected her since childhood, and she trusted him completely. "Princess, the human delegation has requested another audience. Captain Morrison wishes to speak with you again." Vextar's voice carried a note of concern. "The Emperor is not pleased with this human's boldness. He fears it may disrupt the traditional ways." Lyrelay turned from the window. Through her crystalline mask, her eyes glowed with an inner light that had grown brighter since meeting Jake. "What harm can there be in talking? He cannot touch me any more than the others can. But at least he seems to see me as a person rather than just a prize to be won." Vextar bowed his head. "As you wish, Princess. But please be careful. These humans are unpredictable. We do not fully understand their ways." An hour later, Lyrelay met Jake in one of the smaller palace gardens. She had chosen this location because it was private, but also because the flowers here reminded her of stories she had heard about Earth. Jake was waiting for her beside a fountain carved from living crystal. He wore the simple uniform of his people instead of the elaborate robes favored by alien nobles. "Thank you for agreeing to see me again," Jake said as she approached. He kept the same respectful distance as before, but his manner was relaxed and friendly. "I brought something I thought you might like to see." He activated a small holographic projector, and suddenly the air filled with images of Earth. Lyrelay watched in wonder as scenes of blue oceans and green forests appeared before her. She had never seen a world with so much natural color and life. "This is my home," Jake explained as the images shifted to show human cities and people going about their daily lives. "I know it's not as advanced as Celestria Prime, but there's something special about it. Everyone can touch everyone else. Families hold hands, lovers embrace, children play together. It's something most people take for granted. but I've been thinking about what that must be like for you. Lyrelei felt something tighten in her chest as she watched the holographic humans embracing and laughing together. I have never known such simple contact. Even as a child, my condition made me dangerous. I killed my first pet by accident when I was 5 years old. My parents had to keep me isolated. That must have been incredibly lonely, Jake said quietly. But you know what I've learned since meeting you? You've found other ways to connect. The way you listen to each suitor during the ceremony, the way you speak to your people. You may not be able to touch physically, but you touch hearts and minds. They walked slowly through the garden as Jake told her stories about Earth culture. He spoke of music and art and literature. He described the concept of friendship and how humans formed bonds that lasted entire lifetimes. Lyrelei found herself hanging on every word. This was a perspective she had never encountered before. "Tell me about your family," she asked as they sat on a bench carved from moonstone. Jake's expression grew soft. "I have 2 sisters back on Earth. Lisa is a scientist like Dr. Grant who came with our delegation. She studies alien biology and dreams of finding ways to help different species work together. My younger sister Amy is an artist. She paints pictures that somehow capture emotions in color. I think you would like her work." "And your parents?" "They run a small farm in what we call Kansas, growing food and raising animals. Simple work, but honest. They taught me that every person has value regardless of their power or position. That kindness matters more than strength." Jake looked at her with those warm human eyes. "I think they would like you very much." Lyrelei felt something she had never experienced before. A longing for this simple life Jake described where families worked together and people cared for each other without fear. "Your world sounds peaceful. Here everything is about politics and power. Even my marriage will be decided by what alliances it can create." "Maybe it doesn't have to be that way," Jake suggested gently. "Maybe you have more choices than you realize." Over the following days, Jake continued to visit Lyrelei in the gardens. Each time he brought something new to share. Sometimes it was music from Earth played through small speakers. Other times it was poetry or stories about human heroes who chose love over duty. Lyrelei began to look forward to these meetings more than anything else in her life. Dr. Lisa Grant had joined them on several occasions. The human scientist was fascinated by Zephyrian biology and had asked respectful questions about Lyrelei's condition. Unlike the other doctors who had studied her case, Dr. Grant seemed more interested in understanding than in finding a cure. "Your bioelectric field is amazing," Dr. Grant had said during one visit. "It's not random or chaotic. There's a pattern to it, almost like it's designed to protect you, but the intensity makes it dangerous to others." "The royal physicians say it cannot be changed," Lyrelei replied. "It is part of my genetic structure, a blessing and a curse inherited from my ancestors." "Maybe," Dr. Grant had said thoughtfully, "but humans have learned that just because something has always been one way doesn't mean it always has to be that way. We're good at finding new solutions to old problems." The other alien suitors had begun to take notice of Jake's unusual courtship. Prince Kael'thas had confronted him outside the palace demanding to know what game he was playing. Jake had simply responded that he was not playing any game at all. He was just getting to know an interesting person. Word of the human's strange behavior had reached the Emperor. Lyrelei's father had summoned her for a private audience in the throne room. The ancient Zephyrian ruler looked tired and worried as he spoke to his daughter. "This human concerns me, child. He shows no proper respect for our ways. The other nobles are growing restless. They came here expecting a traditional ceremony, and now there is talk of this outsider disrupting everything. He has done nothing." "Wrong, father," Lyrelei replied carefully. "He speaks with me as any friend might. He shares stories of his world and asks about mine. There is no harm in such conversations." The Emperor studied his daughter's face through her crystalline mask. "You defend him quickly. Be careful that you do not mistake novelty for something deeper. This human will return to his world when the ceremony is over. You will remain here to rule our people. Do not forget your duties in pursuit of impossible dreams." That evening, as Lyra sat alone in her chambers, she thought about her father's words. Jake would indeed return to Earth eventually. Their friendship was temporary, no matter how much she had come to treasure it. But for the first time in her life, someone had looked past her deadly condition and seen just her. She made a decision. That would change everything. Tomorrow, she would do something no member of the royal family had done in over a century. She would remove her mask and let Jake see her true face. Jake stood in the moonlit garden waiting for Princess Lyra as he had every evening for the past week. But tonight felt different. Her message had been brief and urgent, asking him to meet her in the most secluded part of the palace grounds. When she appeared walking slowly along the crystal pathway, Jake could see tension in every line of her body. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. Her voice carried a note of nervousness Jake had never heard before. "There is something I must show you, something no one has seen for many years." Jake moved closer but still maintained the safe distance they had established. "Whatever it is, I'm here to listen." Lyra's hands trembled as she reached up to the clasps of her crystalline mask. "When I was a child, the royal physicians discovered something terrible about my condition. The bioelectric field that makes my touch deadly is not stable. It grows stronger each year. But worse than that, it is slowly killing me from the inside." The mask came free, and Lyra let it fall to the ground with a soft chime. Jake felt his breath catch in his throat. Her face was beautiful beyond description, with features that seemed carved from starlight itself. But there were also dark veins visible beneath her pale skin that pulsed with electric energy. Her eyes glowed brighter than ever, but Jake could see pain in them now. The field was designed by ancient bioengineers to protect the royal bloodline, she continued. But they made it too powerful. Most who inherit it die before reaching adulthood. I have lived longer than any in recorded history, but the physicians estimate I have perhaps 6 months before the energy burns out my nervous system completely. Jake stared at her, trying to process what she was telling him. This incredible woman who had shown him such kindness and intelligence was dying. The very thing that made her untouchable was slowly destroying her from within. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked gently. "Because you have given me something I never expected to find. Hope, friendship, maybe even love." Tears ran down her cheeks, leaving glowing trails on her skin. "I wanted someone to know me as I truly am, before the end comes. You have been the only person to see past what I am to who I am." Jake felt his heart breaking for this lonely princess who had carried such a terrible burden alone. Without thinking, he stepped forward, reaching out his hand toward her face. Lyra gasped and moved back quickly. "Jake, no. Even being this close is dangerous for you. The field extends several inches from my skin." "I don't care," Jake said firmly. "There has to be something we can do. Some way to help you. Dr. Grant is brilliant and human medicine has solved problems. That seemed impossible before." "Your Dr. Grant has already been studying my condition," Lyra admitted. "I gave her permission to examine the royal medical records. She believes there might be a way to redirect the energy instead of trying to remove it. But the process would be extremely dangerous and has never been attempted." Jake's eyes lit up with the same determination that had driven humanity to explore the stars. "Then we try it. We don't give up without a fight." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. Commander Vexitar emerged from the shadows with several other Zephyrian guards. The old warrior looked grim as he approached the princess. "Your Highness, you must return to the palace immediately. Prince Kael'thas has arrived with a fleet of warships. He demands an immediate audience and threatens war if you do not accept his proposal tonight." Lyra quickly retrieved her mask and secured it over her face again. How many ships? Over 100 battle cruisers. Enough to devastate our orbital defenses if he chooses to attack. Vexatar glanced at Jake with obvious suspicion. He claims, the humans' interference has made a mockery of the ancient ceremony and demands satisfaction. Jake felt anger rise in his chest. I haven't interfered with anything. I've just been talking with her like any civilized person would. That is exactly what angers him, Vexatar replied coldly. You have treated our princess as an equal, rather than showing proper reverence for her power. It undermines the fear and respect the royal family depends on for control. As they hurried back toward the palace, Jake could see the alien warships hanging in the night sky like angry stars. Prince Kael'thas was from a warrior species that valued strength above all else. Jake had read about the hegemony in the briefing. Files. They were conquerors who had built their empire through intimidation and force. The throne room was packed with alien nobles and Zephyrian officials when they arrived. Prince Kael'thas stood before the emperor's throne wearing battle armor that seemed to absorb light around him. He was tall even for his species, with red skin, marked by ritual scars, and eyes like burning coals. Your Majesty, Kael'thas said in a voice like grinding metal. I have come to claim what was promised, your daughter's hand in marriage and the alliance it will bring. But I find this ceremony has been corrupted by the presence of these primitive humans who dare to treat your daughter as if she were common. The emperor looked older and more frail than Jake had ever seen him. The stress of the situation was clearly taking its toll. Prince Kael'thas, you honor us with your presence, but the ceremony follows ancient law. Princess Lyrelai has the right to consider all suitors before making her choice. Ancient law does not account for the interference of outsiders, Kael'thas snarled. He pointed directly at Jake. This human has poisoned her mind with alien ideas. He must be removed from consideration permanently. Jake stepped forward, despite Ambassador Ross's restraining hand on his arm. I'm not asking to be considered as a suitor. I'm just here as a friend. If that threatens you, maybe you should ask yourself why. The alien prince's eyes flamed brighter with rage. You dare speak to me directly, human? Your species has existed for barely a moment in galactic terms. You have no right to interfere in matters between your betters. That's where you're wrong, Jake replied calmly. We may be new to the galactic community, but we've learned something important. Real strength doesn't come from fear or intimidation. It comes from connection and understanding, from treating others with respect regardless of their power. The throne room fell silent as the two very different beings faced each other. Prince Kael'thas represented the old ways of the galaxy where might made right and the strong dominated the weak. Jake represented something new, a species that valued cooperation over conquest. Princess Lyrelai had remained silent during the confrontation, but now she stepped forward. Her voice carried clearly across the vast chamber. Prince Kael'thas, I appreciate your offer of alliance, but I cannot accept a proposal made under threat of force. If you wish to court me properly, you will withdraw your fleet and make your case based on merit rather than intimidation. The alien prince's face darkened with fury. You would choose this pathetic human over a warrior prince? Your condition has clearly affected your judgment as well as your body. My condition, Lyrelai said quietly, is no longer your concern. She turned to face Jake across the throne room. Even through her mask, he could see the determination in her glowing eyes. Captain Morrison, you have shown me kindness when others offered only fear or greed. You have treated me as a person when others saw only power or danger. If Dr. Grant believes there is hope, then I am willing to try her solution. Jake felt his heart racing as he understood what she was asking. The experimental procedure Dr. Grant had theorized could save Lyrelai's life, but it would require a volunteer to undergo biomodification that might prove fatal. Someone would have to be willing to risk everything for a chance to help her. I'll do it, Jake said without hesitation. Whatever the risks, I'm willing to try. Prince Kael'thas roared with rage, and his hand moved to the weapon at his side. This insult will not stand. If you will not see reason, then I will take what should be mine by right of conquest. The Emperor rose from his throne with effort. His ancient voice carried the weight of centuries. Then you declare war on the Zephyrian Empire. So be it. But know that we do not stand alone. The human delegation came here under our protection. An attack on them is an attack on us. Jake looked around the throne room at the faces of aliens from dozens of different species. Some looked frightened, while others seemed excited by the prospect of conflict. But Princess Lyra Lay stood straight and proud despite the danger surrounding them. "When can Dr. Grant begin the procedure?" she asked quietly. Jake smiled despite the approaching battle. "As soon as you're ready." Dr. Lisa Grant worked frantically in the makeshift medical laboratory she had set up in the palace's deepest chambers. Above them, Prince Kael'thas's fleet had begun moving into attack formation, while Zephyrian defense ships scrambled to meet them. The sound of weapons charging could be heard even through the thick crystal walls. "Are you absolutely sure about this, Jake?" Dr. Grant asked as she prepared the biomodification equipment. "The theory is sound, but we've never tested it on a living subject. You could die in the first few seconds, or the process could drive you insane." Jake lay on the medical table, trying not to think about the battle raging overhead. Princess Lyra Lay sat beside him, still wearing her mask, but he could feel her concern radiating from her like heat. "I'm sure, Lisa, if there's even a chance this could save her life, then it's worth the risk." "The concept is actually quite elegant," Dr. Grant continued as she worked. "Instead of trying to make you immune to Lyra Lay's bioelectric field, we're going to give you a complementary energy signature. Two opposing forces that balance each other out, but the modification will bind you together permanently. You'll never be able to be apart for more than a few days without both of your energy systems destabilizing." Princess Lyra Lay reached toward Jake's hand, then stopped herself. "This is too much to ask of you. I have lived with my condition for 25 years. I can accept my fate rather than risk your life." "No," Jake said firmly. "I've made my choice. Besides, someone has to show these alien princes that humans don't back down from a challenge." The laboratory shook as explosions echoed from somewhere above them. Commander Vextar burst through the doors with several guards. "Princess, the battle has begun. Prince Kael'thas is demanding you surrender immediately or he will destroy the palace." "How long do you need?" Lyra Lay asked Dr. Grant. "At least 2 hours for the full modification process. The bioenergetic integration has to happen slowly, or Jake's nervous system won't survive the shock." Another explosion rocked the palace and dust fell from the ceiling. Vextar looked grim as he received reports through his communication device. "Our defenses are holding for now, but Kael'thas has brought more ships than we anticipated. The human vessels are trying to help, but they are greatly outnumbered." Jake felt a surge of pride knowing that his people were fighting alongside the Zephyrians, despite the odds. "What's the tactical situation?" "Lieutenant Ben Carter is leading your fighter squadrons in hit-and-run attacks on the hegemony fleet. Their strategy is unlike anything we have seen before. Instead of engaging in direct combat, they strike quickly, then vanish before the enemy can respond. It is causing confusion in Kael'thas's ranks, but there are simply too many enemy ships." Dr. Grant activated the biomodification chamber, and Jake felt energy beginning to course through his body. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced. Electric fire seemed to race along his nerves while his cellular structure began to change at the molecular level. The pain was incredible, but he gritted his teeth and endured it. "The process is working," Dr. Grant reported as she monitored the readings. "Jake's bioelectric signature is shifting to match the frequency that should complement Lyra Lay's field, but his body is fighting the changes. We need more time." Princess Lyra Lay stood and began pacing despite the danger around them. "There must be something I can do to help with the battle. My condition may be a curse, but it also gives me power. Perhaps I can use it somehow." Your Highness, Vextar said carefully, your father has forbidden you from risking yourself in combat. You are the heir to the Empire. My father is dying, Lyrelay replied sadly. The stress of ruling and now this battle are taking their toll on him. I can see it in his eyes. Soon I will be Empress whether I survive this day or not. I have to act like one. The laboratory shook again, and this time pieces of the ceiling began to fall. Dr. Grant worked desperately to keep the biomodification equipment stable, while Jake's body continued to change. His skin had begun to glow with a faint blue light. That grew brighter as the process continued. I can feel something happening, Jake gasped through gritted teeth. It's like there's electricity building up inside me, but it doesn't hurt anymore. It feels almost familiar. That's your new bioelectric signature coming online, Dr. Grant explained. If this works, you should be able to not only touch Lyrelay safely, but actually share energy with her. Your fields will strengthen each other, instead of one destroying the other. Above them, the battle was reaching its climax. Lieutenant Carter's voice crackled through the communication system. All ships, this is Falcon Leader. The Hegemony fleet is concentrating their fire on the palace. We're trying to draw them off, but they're not taking the bait. Recommend immediate evacuation of all non-combatants. Negative, Falcon Leader, came the reply from Commander Vextar. The Princess is conducting critical medical procedures. We hold position at all costs. Jake tried to sit up despite the energy coursing through his body. How much longer, Lisa? 30 more minutes for full integration. But Jake, your vital signs are fluctuating wildly. I'm not sure your body can take much more of this. Princess Lyrelay had stopped pacing and was staring at the readings on Dr. Grant's equipment. Even through her mask, Jake could see she was making a difficult decision. There is another way, she said quietly. If Jake's bioelectric field is already partially modified, then perhaps partial contact might be possible. We could attempt a limited connection now, rather than waiting for full integration. Dr. Grant looked horrified. That could kill both of you. We have no idea what partial bioelectric contact might do. The palace defenses are failing, Vextar reported grimly. Prince Kael'thas has broken through the outer shields. His assault troops will reach this level within minutes. Jake struggled to his feet, ignoring the protests from Dr. Grant. His entire body was glowing now with blue-white energy that seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. Then we don't have 30 minutes. We try it now or we don't try at all, Princess. Lyrelay slowly removed her mask and let it fall to the floor. Her face was even more beautiful than Jake remembered, but the dark veins under her skin were pulsing more rapidly now. The stress of the battle and her concern for Jake were affecting her condition. If this kills us both, at least we tried something new, she said with a sad smile. At least we chose our own fate instead of letting it be chosen for us. Jake held out his hand toward her. The blue glow around his fingers seemed to reach toward the electric aura surrounding Lyrelay. Together then? She nodded and slowly extended her own hand. As their fingers came within inches of each other, both of their bioelectric fields began to react. Instead of the violent discharge everyone expected, the two energy signatures seemed to recognize each other and begin to harmonize. It's working, Dr. Grant breathed in amazement. The fields are synchronizing instead of conflicting. Jake felt the moment when their fingertips finally touched. Instead of death, there was a sensation like coming home after a long journey. Energy flowed between them, but instead of destroying it, seemed to complete something that had been missing in both of them. The glow around their joined hands grew brighter, but it was warm and comforting rather than dangerous. The effect spread outward from their connection. Jake could feel Lyrelay's thoughts and emotions as if they were his own. She was experiencing the same thing. For the first time in her life, she could touch another living being without fear. And Jake could feel the incredible power that flowed through her, finally finding a safe outlet. The energy pulse that resulted from their full connection spread throughout the palace and beyond. Every person within miles felt it as a wave of warmth, and hope that seemed to strengthen their resolve. The Zephyrian defenders fighting in space suddenly found their weapons more accurate and their shields more effective. Lieutenant Carter's voice came through the communicator with excitement. "Whatever just happened down there, it's affecting the entire battle. The enemy ships are losing power and their weapons are misfiring. It's like their technology can't handle whatever energy field you've created." Prince Kael'thas himself appeared, in the laboratory doorway with a squad of his warriors. But when he saw Jake and Lyra standing together with energy flowing between them, his expression changed from rage to something approaching fear. "What have you done?" he demanded. "What is this sorcery?" Jake looked at the alien prince with new confidence. The connection with Lyra had not only given him access to her bioelectric power, but also to centuries of Zephyrian knowledge and wisdom. "It's not sorcery," Jake replied calmly. "It's what happens when two people choose to work together instead of trying to dominate each other, something your species has never understood." The energy field around Jake and Lyra pulsed brighter, and Prince Kael'thas's warriors began to back away. Their weapons and armor were being affected by the bioelectric discharge, making them unreliable. "This is impossible," Kael'thas snarled. "No one can survive contact with the Death Princess. I have seen her kill with a touch." "That was before," Lyra said with quiet dignity. "Now I have someone who balances me, someone who sees strength in connection rather than conquest." The alien prince realized his position was hopeless. His fleet was crippled, and his ground forces were powerless against the energy field Jake and Lyra had created. With a final roar of rage, he signaled his retreat. As the hegemony forces withdrew, Jake and Lyra stood together in the ruins of the laboratory. Their hands were still joined and would need to remain so for several more hours while their bioelectric fields fully synchronized. "So what happens now?" Jake asked. Dr. Grant smiled as she packed up her equipment. "Now you two get to figure out how to rule an empire together. Because like it or not, you're bonded for life." 6 months had passed since Jake Morrison and Princess Lyra had joined their bioelectric fields in the depths of the Crystal Palace. The transformation had been more dramatic than anyone could have predicted. Not only had they saved Lyra's life, but their combined energy signature had unlocked new technologies and capabilities that benefited the entire Zephyrian Empire. Jake stood on the observation deck of the orbital station that now served as the capital of the reformed Galactic Federation. Through the transparent walls, he could see ships from dozens of different species working together on construction projects that would have been impossible before. The bioelectric technology derived from his bond with Lyra had revolutionized everything from faster-than-light travel to medical science. "The Council is ready for you," announced Ambassador Helen Ross as she approached. The experienced diplomat had been instrumental in negotiating the new treaties that brought former enemies together as allies. "The representatives from the Outer Rim colonies have some concerns about the new energy distribution systems." Jake nodded and straightened his formal robes. He still felt uncomfortable with all the ceremony that came with his new position, but Lyra had patiently taught him the importance of tradition in diplomatic relations. "How is she doing with the Industrial Council meeting?" "Empress Lyra has them completely charmed as usual," Helen replied with a smile. "She managed to convince 3 different species to share their manufacturing technologies just by listening to their concerns and finding common ground. You two make quite a team." As Jake made his way to the council chambers, he reflected on how much his life had changed. The bioelectric bond with Lyra meant they could never be separated by more than a few light years without both of them weakening. But rather than feeling trapped, Jake had discovered that their connection enhanced everything they did. They could share thoughts and emotions across vast distances, and their combined abilities made them more effective leaders than either could have been alone. The council chamber was filled with representatives from species that had been enemies just months before. The hegemony had sent ambassadors after Prince Kael'thas had been removed from power by his own people. Even they had realized that cooperation was more profitable than conquest in the new galactic order. The Outer Rim colonies are concerned about becoming dependent on bioelectric technology, explained Senator Vexran of the Mining Confederation. What happens if something were to happen to you and Empress Lyralai? Would our entire civilization collapse? Jake had been expecting this question. It was one of the most common concerns raised about their new system. Senator, that's exactly why we've been working to train others in bioelectric manipulation. Dr. Grant has identified 17 individuals from different species who show the potential for similar modifications. We're not trying to create a system that depends on just 2 people. But none of the others have achieved the level of integration that you and the Empress have, pointed out Representative Koltar from the hegemony. The power differential is enormous, which is why we've also been developing purely technological alternatives, Jake replied. The bioelectric technology is powerful, but we're making sure that every system has non-biological backups. We learned from human history that putting all your resources in one basket is dangerous. The discussion continued for several hours as Jake worked through the concerns of the various representatives. The political challenges of uniting so many different species were enormous, but he had discovered that his human perspective often provided solutions that others missed. Where alien species saw insurmountable differences, Jake saw opportunities for cooperation. Meanwhile, in another part of the station, Empress Lyralai was dealing with her own set of challenges. The Industrial Council included some of the most stubborn and competitive species in the galaxy. Getting them to work together required all of her diplomatic skills, plus the enhanced empathy that came from her bioelectric abilities. The Crystalline Syndicate refuses to share their mining techniques, reported Chief Engineer Tom Bradley, one of the humans who had joined the permanent diplomatic staff. They claim it would give their competitors an unfair advantage. Lyralai studied the holographic display showing mineral extraction rates across the galaxy. Her connection to Jake allowed her to access his memories of human industrial cooperation, and she had an idea. What if we created a system where each species contributes their best techniques to a common database, but in return, they get access to everyone else's innovations? She suggested. Instead of hoarding knowledge, they could benefit from the discoveries of others. The crystalline representative, a being made entirely of living gemstones, sparkled with interest. That would require enormous trust between traditional competitors. Trust that we would guarantee, Lyralai replied. Jake and I would personally oversee the knowledge sharing to ensure fairness. Our bioelectric bond makes deception extremely difficult. We literally cannot lie to each other, so we understand the value of honesty in relationships. The breakthrough came when she demonstrated the principle by sharing some of the Zephyrian Empire's most closely guarded manufacturing secrets. The other species realized that if the royal family was willing to give up their technological advantages, then the new system might actually work. As both meetings concluded, Jake and Lyralai felt each other's satisfaction through their bond. They met in their private quarters, overlooking the construction of the new Federation headquarters. The building was a marvel of cooperative engineering, with each species contributing their unique architectural elements to create something no single culture could have built alone. Any word from Earth about the cultural exchange program? Lyralai asked, as they watched human children playing with young aliens in the station's parks. My sister Amy is leading the first group of artists who want to study Zephyrian crystal. Singing, Jake replied, and Lisa says the joint research projects are producing discoveries faster than anyone expected. Apparently, human curiosity combined with alien patience makes for very effective science teams. Their peaceful moment was interrupted by urgent alerts from the station's defense systems. Commander Vexitar appeared on the communications screen, looking more worried than Jake had seen him since the battle with Prince Kael'thas. Your Majesties, we have a problem. Long-range sensors have detected a massive fleet approaching from the galactic rim. The energy signatures don't match any known species. They appear to be artificial constructs of some kind. Jake felt Lyrelai's concern spike through their connection. How long until they reach inhabited systems? 6 days at their current speed. But that's not the worst part. They're destroying everything in their path. Entire star systems are being consumed and converted into raw materials for more ships. The enemy Jake and Lyrelai faced in their final challenge was unlike anything the galaxy had encountered before. The Void Collective was not a species, but a machine intelligence that viewed all organic life as a disease to be eliminated. They had been dormant in the space between galaxies for millions of years, but the bioelectric pulse from Jake and Lyrelai's bonding had awakened them. They see our connection as a threat, Lyrelai realized as they studied the tactical reports. The combination of organic life and bioelectric enhancement represents everything they were designed to destroy. The battle that followed was not won through superior weapons or tactics, but through the network of connections that Jake and Lyrelai had built across the galaxy. When the Void Collective attacked expecting to face divided species fighting independently, they instead encountered a coordinated defense where each civilization contributed their unique strengths to a unified strategy. Human creativity provided unpredictable tactics that confused the machine intelligence. Zephyrian bioelectric technology disrupted the artificial construct's control systems. The crystalline species created shields that could absorb energy weapons, while the hegemony provided the raw firepower needed to destroy the massive enemy, ships. The final confrontation took place in the space around the Federation capital. Jake and Lyrelai stood together in the station's command center, channeling their combined bioelectric field through the defensive systems. The energy they generated not only protected their allies, but awakened dormant capabilities in species across the galaxy. "It's working," reported Dr. Grant from the science station. "The bioelectric pulse is triggering evolutionary responses in multiple species. They're developing their own enhanced abilities. The Void Collective had been designed to destroy organic life, but they had never encountered organic life that could adapt and evolve in real time. As more and more species developed bioelectric capabilities, the machine intelligence found their weapons less effective and their tactics useless against opponents who could literally think faster than their programming could adapt. When the last of the artificial constructs was destroyed, Jake and Lyrelai collapsed from exhaustion. They had pushed their bonded abilities to the absolute limit, but they had saved not just their own civilization, but the entire galaxy. The coronation ceremony took place 1 month later with representatives from every known species in attendance. Jake Morrison, the human who had simply asked a lonely princess if she wanted to dance, stood beside Empress Lyrelai as they were crowned co-rulers of the new Galactic Federation. When reporter Amy Chen asked Jake how a human had managed to win the heart of the untouchable princess, he simply smiled and gave the answer that would be remembered throughout galactic history. "I didn't try to touch her heart," he said, looking at his wife with obvious love. "I asked if I could earn it." The galaxy had entered a new age where cooperation was stronger than conquest, and where the connections between different peoples created possibilities that none could achieve alone. It was a future built on the simple human idea that everyone deserved to be treated with kindness and respect regardless of their power or position. And in the end, that had made all the difference.